There was a thing you said that I wanted you to clarify just for the sake of
Sure,
our audience, in case they're
sure,
not.
sure.
You said most lawyers want to get to courts and seek an adjournment. What does that mean?
Okay. Remember I told you about rule one of our law,
Mm,
right? Our High Court rules talks about expedition.
mm,
We must prosecute our cases expeditiously.
mhm,
Okay. That means every time there's a hearing, you're supposed to progress the matter.
mm.
Okay. Sometimes, through no one's fault, you just can't progress it for whatever reason because there are too many loose ends and they don't always come together at the same time.
Mm,
But some of my brethren and sistren, it's almost become an art form.
mm.
Their sole mission when they're going to court, armed with a diary, only a diary, will go into court and tell the most incredulous stories, seeking that the matter be put over to another date without any constructive work being done on that day.
I see. So that's what an adjournment is, trying to
That's what
just
German is. Put
postpone
it,
the thing
yeah, to
constantly.
another day. Yeah, pretty much.
How does that help their client, their defendant?
I don't know how. No, to be fair, sometimes it is at the behest of their client. I've come to realize that our courts in Ghana are sometimes used as a way to a number of things. One, to frustrate people,
Hmm.
bully people, or just kind of delay the inevitable. Gives them time to, hopefully, it'll frustrate you to the point where you don't want to pursue it anymore.
Basically, you can maneuver the system.
Yeah, to contrast the two. In this country,
Hmm.
if you issue proceedings and it's deemed to be devoid of merit, it won't go past stage one. Or I should say, ordinarily, it won't go past stage one. It will be kicked
Mm.
back and saying, this case is devoid of merit. Or if it gets past stage one, the recipient can say, Judge, strike this case out because it doesn't have any merit. It doesn't show a cause of action. In other words, there are checks and balances.
Hmm.
We don't have that in Ghana.
I see.
As an example, you owe me money, right? You don't pay me, I issue proceedings. You answer in your defense, yes, I owe you money, but I don't have the money just yet. How is that a defense?
Well, what do you want me to do?
Right. So, exactly. Back then. And so you will get your money because obviously you put it on paper that you admit that you owe the money. But
Mm,
another example where negotiations would have been better, but no,
mm.
spend money. It's a dichotomy.
I think this links to the problem of a lack of strong institutions that we face in many African countries, and we're addressing the judicial. I always struggle with that word, judicial system in Ghana, and how does that reflect across the rest of the country, like other parts of the governmental institutions, because I assume that whatever corruption or maneuvering is being done in the courts can also be done outside of the courts in other parts of the government. What practical steps can be taken, do you think, to disrupt the cycle and change things?
It's a very good question, and I'm grateful to you for asking that question because you're right. We ought to focus on solutions. I think it starts with every man, woman, and child to have a vested interest in the outcome of how Ghana or countries like Ghana end up being, right? If there's this apathy towards the country, then we become strangers in our own country because we then let other countries dictate our philosophies, our way of life.
And that's what's happening right now in a lot of African countries, right? I feel like they're not dictating their own economic futures. We're not economically independent, basically.
At
We're
all.
either reliant on the dollar rates or we're reliant on this.
Mm.
Yeah, that's like the normal standard. How do we fix that?
I have a very good friend who I must introduce you to, who I think I told you was once an independent candidate for president in 2008.
Oh, in Ghana.
Him and I talk a lot, and we always try and figure out if there's any solutions we can conceive of and maybe and roll it out. One of the things we talked about was when crypto was the business. In fact, crypto is still very much alive, but when it was at its pomp,
Mm.
we often wondered why any African government would not, instead of using the dollar as the benchmark of their commodities,
Mm.
translate that to crypto.
Well, I would say it's because crypto, a lot of them, apart from Bitcoin, a lot of them were just scams, pyramid schemes, fell
Sure,
over.
but that's because the creator of that scheme. But
Mm.
imagine if you, instead of tying your commodity to the dollar, you
Mm.
tied it to your currency, but it's a crypto form currency.
Oh, I see. Stable coin.
Yeah, call it Ghana coin or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly, whenever you're selling, you're getting the money, which is because don't forget, right now, our currency, Ghanaian currency, right, suffers whenever the dollar goes up.
Yeah. I think it was yesterday that Kawa was saying that just the Ukraine war
Exactly.
affected the
Exactly.
Ghanaian economy terribly.
Exactly.
I would
Exactly.
never would have guessed that.
Believe me, and I was in Ghana at the time, and it was, in fact, it gets to a point where I feel bad because the spike has a very significant impact on, as is always the case, people at the lower end of the spectrum,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't affect those at the top because, of course, they can massage. To answer your question, that's one.
So before we move on, can you just explain for our listeners how the Ukraine war affected the Ghanaian economy? Because some people might not know that.
So, rightly or wrongly, most stocks are affected by world events, good or
Mm,
bad, right?
mm.
Ghana is susceptible because it's highly dependent. In fact, although we don't use the dollar, most people trade in dollar
In Ghana.
in Ghana. Right now, I think the Ghanaian dollar is about 18 to $1, something like that, or maybe 16 to $1.
The Ghanaian currency is called Ghanaian dollar.
No, cedi, the
Mm.
Ghanaian cedi, you get about 15, let's say 15 cedis to
Dollar.
one US dollar, right?
And people trade in dollar. Why instead of cities? Because
Because the dollar holds its value, the cedi doesn't.
okay,
So if I'm selling you something, I'd want to sell it to you in dollar, because even if you give me the dollar a month, a year later, it's still a
it'll still
dollar
be
versus
cities that go up and down. And if you can, why does the city go up and down very briefly?
because it's not pegged against anything of value.
Okay,
So it's almost like it's in the wind, and if the wind blows, so does our currency,
the
right?
cities
You think a country that like ours, that's blessed with a whole range of resources, would be in a position to peg our currency against our commodities
like
so that it's
gold.
not susceptible, but it's not the case. Now,
Yeah.
is it because I am smart? Absolutely not. There are people who are smarter than me that are in our government or were in our government that ought to know better to how we can secure our currency so that it's not susceptible to huge fluctuations, right?
Mm.
But it doesn't serve their interest to do that.
It doesn't serve their interest. That's a
Yeah.
very good point. It doesn't serve their interest to make the cities a stable currency and
Mhm.
improve Ghana, even though they are Ghanaian and they run the country and this is what they represent. It doesn't serve their interest to make the country better.
That's my view, 100%. I think the predominant prevailing view is how can I benefit from this, me and mine, rather than how can we. There's no we mentality. There tends to be an I mentality, I and mine.
Mm,
And that's why Ghana to this day, because anyone that knows anything about Ghana will know that we are richly resourced. We
mm,
now have oil, diamonds, bauxite, gold, etc. And yet we have the highest rates of poverty, homelessness, sick illness, people die very early. There's so much that
hmm,
demonstrates people have had operations under torchlights, and we have a dam.
mm.
We can't guarantee electricity 24/7 in Ghana. Water.
What you've just said now relates pretty well to what you said earlier when I was asking what steps could be taken. You
Yes.
said we need to get people to have a vision. What was it that you said?
I reiterate, I think the first step would be, and this is the easiest step, to
Mm,
educate people about the value of their vote. To date, in my view, most voters feel as though there's no value. So they are willing to sell it for tuppenny halfpence to whoever's willing to buy it,
mm.
right? And even when they've exercised their vote, they don't appreciate they can hold the person they've elected accountable and make them responsible for the promises they've made.
Mm.
Okay. So the minute that enlightenment kicks in, suddenly the elected official can't act with impunity.
Yeah, but do they know how to hold these people responsible?
That's what I'm saying. So there needs to be a system of educating these people, the populace, about
Mm.
the value of the vote and what responsibility it comes with, and therefore how they can hold these people accountable.
Civic education.
Exactly. So once we do that,
Mm.
suddenly our elected officials will, to use an expression in Ghana, will be steady. They will know they can't just duck and dive and everything's hunky dory,
Mm.
right? They can't just talk cack in parliament and hope they get away with it.